Just another Saturday night.
Power is a fragile thing.
Staring me up how much I love you
Dwight, is that you?
and what I gotta do.
She owns me.
She was an angel.
When she wishes it, we die. One of these days, she'll pull the trigger. It's a good game.
You keep asking for it and asking for it.
That there's a dame to kill for.
Sin City's where you go in with your eyes open. Or you don't come out at all.
All right, this is the script. Regularly the beat sheet edition, but we're not doing a beat sheet for Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For. I'm with my other script doctor, Chris Theokis. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
And I'm David Negrin. We're both staff members of the NYC Screenwriters Collective, and this is the official podcast of the NYCSC. We're doing Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For, and since it's a multi-plot film, doing a beat sheet for it would be very granular. We could do it, but it'd just be kind of a pain in the butt. So instead, we're going to review the film, and we're also I watched Sin City, the original, and Sin City 2 back to back, so I'm going to make some comparisons.
Yeah, it's been about 9 years since I've seen Sin City.
Which is really important. That's a great way to start the conversation. Is Sin City, the original was 2005.
Right.
Obviously, Robert Rodriguez directed with Frank Miller, Robert Rodriguez, and guest director Quentin Tarantino. Okay. This was 2005 was arguably Robert Rodriguez's prime, you know, Spy Kids movies and all that.
Right.
And not, you know, a little less than 10 years later, we get the sequel to Sin City 2. You know, I don't know. What do you make of that? Just what do you make about Robert Rodriguez deciding to do the sequel even 10 years later?
It seems like 10 years too late, to be quite honest. Which is
9 or 8 years too late.
Yeah, I remember Steven Spielberg saying something many, many years ago that you should do it if something was popular enough. You should do a sequel, and you should do it about 4 years after the original came out, which explains something like Raiders of the Lost Ark was followed up with Temple of Doom, Jurassic Park was followed up with its sequel, and so on. And 9 years, in a lot of ways, seems too late. But if the fan base is there, I think they're patient. They would be patient.
I mean, there's such a dirge of great films this year. Why not? But I think it makes for really great script analysis. If you look at the Sin City, that's going to happen a couple times tonight. Yeah. The Sin City. Right now, it's a duology. It's not a trilogy.
Right.
But clearly, Robert Rodriguez was hoping this weekend that Sin City 2 would make enough money that it would garner a third film.
Yeah, that was my impression in one or two of the storylines, and unfortunately, it does not look like he's going to get his wish. That said,
he got beat by Guardians and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
That said, I mean, he did the original so inexpensively. Relative to other movies, he could probably pull a third one out.
Yeah, I think the first one was, yeah.
It was about 40.
Yeah, I mean, Rodriguez is incredibly frugal with his filmmaking process, and that's why I love him as a filmmaker. You know,
he had at the time going for him. There were only 3 other movies doing the same thing, where there was a lot of green screen. There was a lot of. Hang on a second. I think there's some kind of weird creature inside. There's a grasshopper in my apartment. Now, at the time when Sin City 1 came out, there were only 3 other movies doing something similar, whereas a majority of the set was green screen set.
Yeah.
The Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow. There was a Japanese film called Cashern, and there was a European film, the name of which escapes me, but they all did the similar thing. And at the time, 2004, 2005, when they were shooting, that was brand spanking new.
Yeah.
Nobody else was doing something like that.
Yeah, now it's
Kind
a
of par for the
standard
course.
operating procedure to save a lot of money on sets and on locations by doing things all green screen and.
That's
and,
not to take away from how good this movie looked. As many complaints as I may have about it.
Yeah, let's talk
it was
about
a pretty
SimCity 2: Dame to Kill For. How did it look?
It looked really great. It had the same stark black and white film noir look as the first film. It had one thing that struck me was the transitions between scenes, especially in one of the transitions in the Dwight story where he's been beaten up, he's in the car, and he gets thrown out of the car. And just the transition from him being beaten up to being thrown out of the car was absolutely amazing. But transitions don't make a great film.
That was a great moment where Dwight is like hanging on one car, and then he bumps into the police car, and you're like, oh, how are they going to shoot this? Where he's going to have to jump in, and then Rodriguez cuts, and all of a sudden he jumps through the windshield, and they use an animation.
Oh, that was
to push them out.
That was Marv.
Was that Marv? It was Marv.
Remembering, what he was doing. A lot of people get beaten up in this, so it's not surprising that you might forget one for the other.
Yeah, one of the major strengths of the original Sin City was this visual aesthetic that Rodriguez reinvented from the Frank Miller graphic novel. He took it out of the graphic novel and used it on screen. He created this artwork on screen, this stylized aesthetic that gives you almost like a comic book look. In Sin City 2, he actually got away from it. There wasn't as much of it, and I missed it a little bit. He had less of the comic book stuff, less of the we're in a comic book world, more, but still this film noir, black and white with the somewhat colored elements from here to there.
So the color elements, specifically in the Dame to Kill For storyline with Ava, were from the comic book. She had a blue jacket in the comic. Yeah, okay. That was something that progressed through the series. I think there's about 6 or 7 books.
I was wondering how Rodriguez chose what to color and what not, because there didn't seem to be too many rules about it. It seemed to me that he shot the whole thing probably in color, and then he desaturated it, and then he went back in post and said, all right, what's going to be pretty? What are we going to draw attention to? But he did some amazing stuff. But that's cool that if he was taking, I'm sure he's taking his notes from the graphic novel. I mean, and Frank Miller is directing half or less of this movie too. So,
well, in terms of choosing to color things, I think there's a Cadillac with the fins that was colored red, and I think that's from the comic book. I know the jacket that Ava was wearing that was blue was from the comic.
Yeah.
1 or 2 other things, like the color of the character's lips being red, was from the comic. The blood, not so much, if I remember correctly.
They went less blood this time. Did you notice that? Sin City 1, I watched it last night. So bloody. Totally bloody. There was a moment in Sin City 2 early on where Marv cut somebody's throat, and I was looking for the big, bloody, reveal for people to go, ah, in the audience, and it didn't happen. The blood was white. They were black or something. And I was like,
I was going to say, the same thing happened with the character Miho towards the end when she was killing people. There was a lot of white, white splashes of blood. I remember that from the first one too, but I said, it's been 9 years since I've seen it, so I'll take your word for the amount of blood was the original.
It's true. And so some of the things, this was one of the things, just to get out in front, Rodriguez, this was another both Sin Cities could be real grindhouse movies. These are
Yeah.
film noir in a really heightened sense. It's a hyper violent film noir. The crimes that are going on are, in the original was like rape, child molestation, and in this one, there's like torture and murder. It's not actually, the Sin City 2 is not as heavy in those respects.
Right.
But basically, you get your Rodriguez dismemberment. That man loves to dismember the human body. You get your dismemberment. You get men's faces getting beaten in. You get women being slapped.
Yeah.
You get a lot of guys shot in the shoulder and not dying.
Yeah.
Right? Or shot in the leg.
And not dying.
And as you can tell from my my stage name tonight, you get people kicked in the balls. Men are kicked in the balls in this duology more than like anything else.
I have to admit that's true. But speaking of film noirs, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who was in Brick, which was the film noir itself,
Yeah.
said, I want to say it was in the commentary for Brick or in an interview, was that these characters, film noir characters, get beaten up a lot.
Yeah.
Heroes go through the ringer, and his character
It's a
in Brick,
convention. Yeah.
it's a trope of the genre. They get beaten up a lot, even though they might come out on top in the end. They're going to be battered and bruised, and that was certainly true in Sin City 2. Sin City 2 to me was just a parade of film noir cliches, from the conversations between Dwight and Ava at the bar. If you remember the first time they meet, she's an hour late, which is a trope. And then they're like, she's saying, "I still love you," and he's like, "I can't do this anymore."
Yeah, absolutely, the femme fatale. Why don't we just break it up into the four main plots and let's step through them and talk about them. Let's do it in order of the story. The film opens with Marv and the frat boys, right?
Right. Yeah.
What did you make of that? The opening plot.
Yeah, it was. The opening plot could have been cut completely without any damage or anything negative happening to the rest of the film. It was fun when I was watching it because I thought this is going to have something to do with the rest of the movie, and it didn't, which is fine, I guess. I suppose it's a good short film, but that was one thing that frustrated me about this was there was a lot of fat on this film that could have been cut out, and this is the first bit of it. Yeah,
because I agree completely. I mean, the problem here is, obviously Rodriguez and Frank Miller fell in love with the Marv character for this film, but he's involved in the other three major plots, but he doesn't have his own. So it's almost as if they threw in the little frat boy plot up front to give him his own piece in the movie.
Give him something to do.
I mean, he had a major plot in the original Sin City with Nancy,
right?
And then or with Goldie, excuse me, with Goldie and being framed for killing Goldie, as soon as I saw the first plot, as soon as I saw Marv and the frat boys, I thought two things. First, I thought, isn't Marv dead?
Yeah.
Right? And then, and then the second thing I thought was frat boys are not really great antagonists.
No, they're not, especially against somebody like Marv. If I remember correctly from the graphic novel series, though, they jump back and forth in time because I think Frank Miller understood, and I think the comic book publisher understood that this is a popular character. They want to hear more stories from him. Him being around didn't bother me too much because I understood that, hey, he's a popular character. We could see a prequel.
Well, that to me, after I worked out the math, it was, it was a little like following a time travel film. But
yeah,
I realized, I mean, overall, this Sin City 2 is a prequel. Overall.
Yeah. Oh, overall, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Although
because Marv is alive. and Goldie is alive and her wife.
Yeah.
But then there's a couple of conflicts with that because Manute dies in this.
Yeah.
Manute, who was played by Dennis Haysbert.
Right.
Since we lost Michael Clark Duncan, and also Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays the brother of Nick Stahl's like evil ass character from the first one.
Right.
What was the character's name?
He was
Yellow Bastard.
Yellow Bastard. I forget his name, but I
Yeah,
remember
Rourke
the Yellow
Jr.
Bastard.
Yellow Bastard. So if
There's the
Yellow
grasshopper.
Bastard is dead in Sin City 2, and Manute dies in Sin City 2, how could it be a prequel? So, and also the ghost of Hartigan is dead already and has killed himself, right?
A friend of mine, this is a very long time ago, we back in high school, we all went to see Highlander 2. And he titled it Highlander 2, No Relation. And my feeling was, in this case, Sin City 2, no relation to Sin City 1.
Yeah.
Which is fine because all it has to do is be entertaining. And if it isn't entertaining, then then it's committed the biggest sin.
Yeah. So Marv and the Frat Boys, if you think about Sin City 1, all of the antagonists, right, they are supervillains, okay?
Yeah.
They're gruesome psychopaths with special powers, right? You got Yellow Bastard, who's like a gruesome psychopath, like child molester, and then you get Elijah Wood's character, right?
He was something of a serial killer type.
Right, his name was Kevin, but he had these special powers. Like he was like this little young guy, but he had this. He beat the crap out of. I can't remember if it was Bruce Willis or if it was Mickey Rourke, but he had these special powers, right? And so all the bad guys in the first movie were like super villains, right? Aside from Rourke, and Rourke seemed like the most boring villain in Sin City 1. Problem is, he becomes the main villain in Sin City 2, and you don't get any of these super villains with superpowers. The closest thing is Manute, who in this movie looks like M. Bison from Street Fighter, right?
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? I was trying to place it, like I thought maybe he was a cop, but because of his clothes, but no, he wasn't, and I thought he does look familiar.
Yeah, that's right. I think I nailed it. So.
Totally nailed it.
But what do you think of the eye gouge?
Yeah, that actually surprised me a little bit, considering the type of violence that was in it. But I mean, it didn't seem out of place particularly. I think
it was a highlight of the movie. The crowd finally made noise in my theater when it went. Some girl goes ah, and my reaction was like yeah.
I have to ask, how many people were in your theater? Because in mine, I was going to say there were about 15 people, including me in mine.
On a Sunday night opening weekend, New York City, Upper East Side, I had about 20 people in the theater.
I had a family of 5 to my right, and kids 12 and under, and they left the moment there was nudity. Not violence, nudity. So,
that was Dad not doing his homework.
Yeah.
But see, that's another problem with doing a sequel so late. Like, there's no continuity where you feel relationship to the original film. I mean, I had to go watch Sin City 1 last night, just to like find some connection. But
what surprised me is I have an Apple TV, and this summer has been a summer of sequels, and in the movie section of Apple TV, you will see the previous, if it's a sequel, the previous film. So there was, I think, the original Captain America was up.
Yeah.
All these movies were up in order to catch you up, and that wasn't the case with Sin City. One thing, I was on Reddit when I saw the Variety, the link to the Variety article about it not doing well. And a lot of people in the comment section said they had no idea that it was being released this weekend.
And that's just bad, P&R.
But
I mean, that's what happens when you don't have a studio get behind a movie. Even Rodriguez has his own little studio and his own TV channel at El Rey. You know, when a movie doesn't test well, they just don't advertise it.
But I have to admit, though, if people listen to critics, they wouldn't go. I don't think they'd go see this movie because this movie was something of a disappointment for me. I can't say that I was hoping beyond hope that this would do gangbusters at the box office, but when you see the people that are involved in it, you know, Josh Brolin, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Rosario Dawson, I like Dennis Haysbert. You know, I like Christopher Maloney and Jeremy Piven. Stacey
Great
Keach.
names, a bunch of great names, and you know what? I thought that Rodriguez would reach back into the original Sin City and give us more of that. And in Sin City 2, we got less of that.
I thought we got a lot of fat for one thing. You know, to my main issue, I started to do a beat sheet for this movie, and I stopped at setup, which is like the third thing into the beat sheet. And I was like, screw this. But the thing that's
because with a multi-plot, it's like, especially it ends up being a multi-plot film is just a group of short stories, right?
And in this case, I thought there were kind of two through lines: the Dwight story and what I call the Senator Rourke story.
Right. You could break Rourke into Johnny versus Rourke and Nancy and Marv versus Rourke.
But ultimately, I thought there were so many things you could just excise from this. And so, speaking of Johnny could have been excised from this without any problem. That was the Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I loved the Johnny plot. That was the
Don't get me wrong. I thought that was the strongest acting, especially from Mr. Gordon-Levitt.
But also the writing was great. Like the little short story with the girl and then the poker. That was the one thing that was sized correctly in this movie. The Dwight and Ava plot was way too fat. There was too much of that.
But considering that, like I was thinking of like Rourke meeting his end was kind of like a big to do. So it would be Nancy versus Rourke.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the best story of them to pick. It just was the one that had the most. It had the biggest climax. It had the biggest stakes in terms of what was happening. I really enjoyed the Johnny v. Rourke story, and I wish that it had more to do with the rest of it. But
the Nancy Rourke plot comes out of nowhere. It becomes the third act, and rightfully so. It has the most conflict, and it's a great finale. But you know what? The Dwight and Ava plot was really interesting. She was the dame to kill for.
Yeah.
Right?
It kind of should have been its own movie because if I remember correctly, the first Sin City graphic novel was a series of short stories, and then after that, the Dame to Kill For was on its own. It was its own book.
But one of the things I love about these movies is the way that Rodriguez puts together his multi-plot, his ensemble film, right, where the stories overlap and or intertwine, but they're independent. And that way, and that's what I did as a someone who's a screenwriter and who loves great screenplays. I start, when you see a multi-plot movie, you start trying to connect themes, right? And so connecting themes between these 4 short stories in Sin City 2 and then the original 4 plots from Sin City 1. And I found a lot of great overlap of themes. I mean, first main theme was bad fathers making their sons into bad men themselves, right? In the original Sin City, that's where the yellow bastard comes from. It comes from Rourke. Hardigan mentions like his father was not around. There's a lot of themes of this masculinity. Oh, and emasculation. That's where the kicking in the nuts comes from.
This constant kicking in the nuts.
Yes.
And the constant talking about it. I felt a freight train smash me in the ball. Whatever. It's like and yellow bastard actually getting losing.
Losing it. So I don't know. The theme of the fathers and sons, the bad fathers and sons, actually reminded me a bit of 300, another Frank Miller graphic novel that was adapted.
That doesn't particularly surprise me.
Yeah.
He's one that does kind of carry his themes throughout his work. He's like a comic book version of Christopher Nolan, I suppose, who carries his
Yeah,
themes
no,
throughout
I
his
mean,
work.
great writers have super genres, and
Well, back up on that. Writers have super genres. I wouldn't call Frank Miller anymore a great writer, and I think the last time he was a great writer, and this is kind of I guess a nerdgasm. The last time he was a good writer was when he did the Martha Washington series.
really,
Yeah, I don't think that 300 was that particularly good because it was. I didn't like 300's fine. I don't think it's that great. Also,
I thought 300. It's not as ambitious a story as as some of his other graphic novels, but I think it stands alone as the most well balanced, and that's why the original film worked so well.
If you read The Dark Knight Returns, he's been thinking about that story for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because Thermopylae is the Greek for the hot gates.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a character who's not a character that appears in The Dark Knight Returns, but a character that's spoken of in The Dark Knight Returns called Hot Gates, and she's a porn star.
Nice.
And so back in the mid-'80s, he was already thinking about this story.
Yeah.
Ever since the Martha Washington story is a science fiction comic book. It's about an African-American woman growing up in the 21st century, and she saves the world, essentially, which I think is interesting because African-American women aren't well represented in media at all. And then he did 300, and then he did The Dark Knight Strikes Again. He did, it was supposed to be Batman versus Al-Qaeda. It was called he did a graphic novel called Holy Terror, which is visually
You're listing off all
interesting.
incredible pieces of writing.
Not incredible. They're terrible. He is not a good writer.
Terrible.
He understands thematically what he's trying to say. He does not know how to deliver that message. The last time, I will reiterate, the last time he wrote anything good, and this includes Sin City, which is post Martha Washington, is Martha Washington. Sin City's fine. It's good.
You're being a snob at this point. Okay?
I guarantee you I'm not being a snob. All-Star Batman and Robin is not a good book. I'm sorry. I love Frank Miller's work up until Martha Washington. He's an amazing,
all right, so
amazing writer.
at least kiss the ring.
I will kiss the ring up to a certain degree. He's not a great writer. I feel the same way about Alan Moore, if that means anything.
Yeah, there you go. The dialogue from the original Sin City is taken out of the graphic novel. Okay, and the original dialogue from Sin City 1 was fantastic. This stylized film noir, but really R-rated, really graphic violence. He took it to another level. Problem with Sin City 2, the dialogue wasn't as for me. It just wasn't as well written. It wasn't as poetic. It was still stylized, but there was way too much voiceover. There was like a ton of voiceover exposition.
I remember it working a lot better in the graphic novel. I think it does work better in the graphic novel. Sometimes it just doesn't work. You write something that's great on the page, and that reads great on the page, but then somebody actually says it, and it's not that great. And it happens, and I think that's
but that's screenwriting, man. You got to be a badass, okay?
Well, what you need to do is during rehearsals is go, crap, this sucks, and change it. And it doesn't sound like they did that.
You don't do that in rehearsals. You do that in edit, okay? You do that in your second and third draft.
Well, to be fair,
collective.
This is one thing that I will, say about the script is like, yeah, you're gonna write some stuff that sounds great or reads great in your second and third draft. And then you're going to get it in people's mouths, and that's when things really change. When it's in the rehearsals, when it's on the screen.
Yeah.
So they don't have an excuse. Don't get me wrong. That stuff read great on the page, but once it got on screen, it just didn't seem to work. And that really stood out for me in the scene where Ava and Dwight meet at the bar, and she's saying, doing the usual femme fatale thing. I missed you. I love you. I still love you.
Right.
And all fair, fair enough. Hey, that's par for the course for the genre. But
no, you got to do better. You've got to elaborate on it. In Sin City 1, he used the film noir conventions, but it was very poetically done. Okay, it was improved. It was the dialogue.
I have to go get
really well written.
Hang on.
Okay, I'm gonna keep talking about the movie.
Keep going.
So in the second film, Sin City 2, the trouble we have is that the voiceover is not for characterization; it uses exposition. And I think in a lot of the arguments about voiceover and when to use voiceover, the best uses of voiceover in screenwriting are when they add to character. They're not crutches for explaining the movie or the plot. If you look at the last half of Inception, there's a voiceover where Leo DiCap is explaining to the audience everything that they need to understand because the script was so half-baked and the plot was so overly complex and complicated and open and threads were left hanging that someone needed to voice over to exposit all the answers, right? Great voiceover is used in screenwriting as characterization. Like if you use Red's voiceover in Shawshank Redemption, it wasn't a crutch for the plot. It let us get to know Red. It let us get to know the prison. It let us get to know Andy. It was beautiful. And for me in Sin City 2, the voiceover fell a little bit too much into the exposition area. And as you said, I agree. It fell a little bit too much into cliche.
Right. It felt to me like Sunset Boulevard kind of voiceover, which I know is probably blasphemous to speak because that is a classic film, but like you were saying, it was just exposition, and it was reiterating things that we had already seen on the screen. So if you come to the New York City Screenwriters Collective, please try not to do a voiceover in your screenplay.
No, or if you use it for characterization, not exposition. I have no problem, especially in film noir. Voiceover is a convention. You do a film noir without voiceover or without some kind of narrator,
it'll feel weird.
You're missing out on a great tool. Let's get to the plots, the couple of plots here. Let's get to we talked about Marv and the frat boys. It was kind of a throwaway plot just to show Marv as a badass and some action set pieces and to reestablish ourselves in the world, okay?
It seemed to me, just one last thing about that, because we have talked about it a bit, is that it seems like a lot of screenplays and a lot of stories open with an action set piece in order to draw it in.
Yeah.
That's all that this did. Or that's all that this seemed to, that's all the function that this had.
And unlike the original Sin City, it wasn't a bookend. The original Sin City had a bookend, a moment where it wasn't an action set piece, but it was a interesting set piece with Josh Hartnett and a beautiful woman,
right?
Where you think they're falling in love and he's going to save her, and then the bookend at the end of the film is he actually kills her, right?
Right, yeah.
Because Sin City, which is a major character in both of these films, Sin City, everyone's always blaming it on the city and how dark a place it is, and that's one of the great pieces of this mythology is how that Sin City is a desperate place, and that the cops can't save you, and that you got to fight for yourself. The weak will never survive here. Okay, so then on to the Johnny and Senator Rourke plot, which was my favorite plot. But what did you think?
It was my favorite as well, but I wonder if it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt's charisma overall. I feel like if we're not going to talk about if we step away from the script for a second and just talk about the final product on the screen, I thought he was the best actor. He did the most with the character. And, he did the film noir thing. He got beaten up a lot. He broke his fingers. He got shot in the leg. He lost his shoes.
Yeah, the dislocated fingers is not exactly a dismemberment, but it's still in the.
It's a nice visual cue because his fingers aren't pointing straight like mine are right now. They were all twisted at different angles.
Still part of the Rodriguez repertoire.
Yeah, and it's probably a complaint I'd have about any of these storylines is that I didn't get enough of it. And in a sense, that's nice. Hey, this is such a great thing. I want more. But
that's I agree with you. That's how a multi-plot movie should feel. 3 or 4 stories that are great characters, great little world, great little plot. They all get resolved, and then you're like, wow, like all together that made such a such a powerhouse Voltron of a movie that that it worked. And Sin City 1 for me did do that.
Well, in this case, as great as it was, all it did was tell me that Rourke is a bad guy. He doesn't even give a damn about his own kids or his own blood outside of the Yellow Bastard. And if this had not appeared at all in the final product, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but you could say that about every plot. You could take all the plots.
I couldn't say that about. It sounds like I'm gonna disagree with you on this. I couldn't say that about Nancy and the only reason is because, spoiler for the movie, she kills Rourke, and Dwight because he has a very full plot. He is, even though it is worlds apart.
The Dwight Neva plot gets the most screen time.
Yeah, and it's separate from the Rourke plot. And, and I felt like, why didn't this get its own movie? Why?
It's not about getting its own movie. It's about doing the ensemble thing.
Screw the ensemble thing. If it's a good story, give it room to breathe. And this.
It wasn't enough of a story. I thought there was plenty of fat on the Dwight Neva plot.
To be quite honest, I felt there was a little too much fat on the Dwight Neva plot, but it was not about Dwight and Ava that it had too much fat.
There was no fat at all on Ava herself, though.
No, of course not. But in terms of the Johnny Rourke plot, I mean, it was bare bones. It was boiled down to its DNA, pretty much.
Great. The poker stuff, that visual stuff that Johnny did with the deck and the coins, and him having some kind of magic ability to be lucky, and the beautiful girl that he picks up. I don't know. There's a great little story there, and it worked end to end, and it did set up Rourke as the main bad guy. But again, for me, huge problem compared to Sin City 1. Rourke was a bad guy in Sin City 1, but he was the most boring bad guy. Where are these psychopath super villains with superpowers? We do get Minute in the Dwight and Ava plot, but he's just a big tough guy. He doesn't have any of these superpowers.
He had that cool gold eye after about the movie.
That was pretty cool, yeah.
Now, in terms of Rourke being a bad guy, I mean, I agree with you. Where are the super villains, to fight? He was fine as a villain, I thought, but fine is kind of a backhanded compliment in this case. And in terms of showing that he was a bad guy, I don't think we needed, the Johnny storyline. I don't think we needed all the asides. We just needed Nancy if you're going to end with him dying. He's bad enough. He was responsible for the death of Hardigan because of the Yellow Bastard. And her revenge story, if it had been fleshed out more, if it had been more than just a third act kind of story, would have been great. But it wasn't, unfortunately. And, she wasn't given enough to do. Nancy wasn't given enough to do, except for sit around and spat off lines about how Hardigan was supposed to still be there for her and still love her forever and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
Which could have been left unspoken, I think.
The closest we got to a supervillain was this guy Wallenquist, the guy with the big head. He looked a little Jabba the Hutt-like.
And he appeared in one scene, if I remember correctly.
That was it. Yeah, and where did he come from? I think that was set up for the third film or something. But that
was another thing. It's if you're going to have him in it, I mean, I hope he gets a third film, and I hope he's in it. And that's my impression of what they wanted to do. If that's not what their goal was, replace Wallenquist with Rourke. And there you tie the two stories together. But I mean,
could we have given Rourke the Jabba the Hutt head? Actually, it looked more like Pizza the Hutt from Spaceballs.
Yeah, that's right. It's true. It does look like it. I was wondering, who does he look like? He looks like Pizza the Hutt mixed with a character from Doctor Who.
Yeah, it was a film noir Pizza the Hutt. That's
yeah. That's true. And it's it is like a left field character, and if there's no third film, it's just kind of a chick in the bucket.
Ava was working all angles, And so let's move on to the Dwight and Ava plot. It was the main plot. For me, it brought up this second theme that's in both of these films, that's in the Sin City trilogy, which is men getting used by women, right? Frank Miller must have been done wrong several times,
totally must have.
Yeah, so men being used by women, because Ava uses Dwight.
Everybody.
Okay, she uses all the men, and actually, there's a moment where Nancy uses Marv. Remember, in the third act, she's like, remember she cuts herself up to get Marv to go after Rourke, as if Rourke did it.
Yeah.
So that's a theme here, and so the Dwight and Ava plot, I bought it. I thought Josh Brolin was playing an interesting version of the hard-boiled film noir protagonist, except for the fact that he's a photographer.
Well, if you,
Is
I didn't
that
really
very
remember this.
noir? What happened to detective? What happened to tough
My impression
guy?
was that he's a private detective. That this is what he's basically down to doing. His character, if I remember correctly, from the first movie, is played by Clive Owen.
Is it the same guy? Oh,
I think it's supposed to be, but they play it so differently. Hang on, I'm looking at.
I did not know that. Dwight was the Clive. I don't think so. I thought.
Hang on, I'm looking at.
Let's see. Check IMDb on that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
You're right.
Yeah, but in to be fair, in the graphic novel, Dwight does have plastic surgery, and so he does look different.
Right.
However,
Oh, wow.
I remember them acting very differently.
Well, totally different approaches to Dwight. No, completely. But also, what's interesting is that Dwight in this film is, he's cooped up with Ava and her issues, instead of in the first film, it was Dwight and Rosario Dawson's character Gail.
Right, they do touch base on that later in A Dame to Kill For, where she's where Gail says that she still loves him, even though he doesn't love her.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that makes a whole lot more sense. That's a casting problem. I mean, he was a central character in the original film, and you recast Marv. You didn't recast Marv, and you didn't recast Rourke.
And you didn't recast Nancy, and you didn't recast, Gail and Hardigan, and so on.
I know Clive Owen's busy doing The Nick, but which is a great TV show.
I'm looking because.
And you didn't recast Hardigan. You got everybody back.
There were a fair number of actors who were either unavailable or who unfortunately passed away between Sin City 1 and Sin City 2.
You know what? While we're on it,
but this is not the situation. Devon Aoki, who played Miho in the original, the silent Japanese ninja, was replaced by Jamie Chung in this one. And
why did you make that choice?
I read about this the other day. Apparently, Devon Aoki during filming was pregnant, and so it would have kind of stood out.
And where do we know the new actress from? Anything?
Let me give me 2 shakes.
Yeah. I mean, if you talk about, while we're talking about the casting, and this is something that you should think about,
well, she was in The Hangover Part 2 and Part 3. This is Jamie Chung, who's the new Miho.
Yeah.
She was in a show called Believe.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time. She was in a TV show. She's in a movie called Rudderless, which is coming out soon.
Okay, so still breaking out.
Yeah, I mean, she's in The Man with the Iron Fist, which was RZA's directorial debut.
Right.
She was in Sucker Punch.
Right.
Grown Up. She's in some named films, but it's it's a situation where she's.
Here's something. This is a great moment to show these films being 10 years apart, showing the poor state of how difficult it is to be a Hollywood actress and how short your shelf life is. Because if you looked at the male actors from Sin City 1, right? Bruce Willis, Mickey Rourke, Elijah Wood, Clive Owen, even Dennis Haysbert, right? Those guys are still at the A and B list stars, like they're still there. But then you look at poor Jessica Alba, Rosario Dawson, Carla Gugino, Jamie King, and Brittany Murphy, rest her soul, Miss the Girl. Those girls are out of they're out of the main casting.
Well, I mean,
They're not. They're
Jessica,
not on
Jessica
the list.
Alba has been busy. She's in Machete Kills. She was in a couple of shorts.
But she's not who she was 10 years ago. I mean, if you look back in Hollywood history, it's just that, the way Hollywood system works right now is that actresses have a short shelf life. And it's a flaw in the system. Whereas guys like Bruce Willis are still getting paid to do action movies.
Yeah.
When he's doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, the thing that I would say, because I'm looking at Rosario Dawson's IMDb page, and she's been working pretty consistently. It's just
I'm not saying they're not working. I'm just saying these girls were like in 2005. They were all on the rise.
Oh no, true. But what I would suggest is Rosario Dawson. I think more than some of these others took her career in her own hands. Yeah. And so she started to do work. I mean, it was as far back as 2007. She was producing films, and she doesn't have a huge producer credit list, but she's at least doing her own thing. And I think, and this is true for everybody, not just actresses. I think everybody who's an actor who wants to work. Listen to this: is that don't wait for somebody to come and give you the work. If you want to play a specific part.
Take your career in your own hands.
Start putting it out yourself.
Page out of Matthew McConaughey's book, right? The McConaissance happened because he decided to take a bunch of chances and stop playing the good-looking action guy. Decided to take some chances with Mud, with True Detective, and with the Oscar-winning performance in
Dallas Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club. So yeah. So back to the film.
But anyway, it's just something that let's like these people are working like the way you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way the Hollywood system works. So it's unfortunate. Dwight and Ava.
So, but back to the movie.
Let's talk about
the Dwight and Ava storyline had some fat in it as well. I thought.
But it was good. It was well executed.
Bob storyline.
It was well executed. The reveal, like I thought she was a good girl, and then she turned out to be the bad girl. So I bought it.
And the weakness of that was she has this moment where she says, "I don't need to. Once my husband's dead, I'll inherit everything, and I won't ever need a man again." Husband dies, and the first thing she does is she seduces Mort, played by Christopher Maloney. And my first thought was, I thought you didn't need anybody anymore. I thought you were going to just. I don't know. I didn't think you were going to take it easy, but all of a sudden you find her doing the same thing again. And the Mort and Bob, the two cops storyline, excise it, you don't lose a thing. It was a lot of fat in this movie, and it would have, I don't remember how long it was. Besides, it felt like.
But see, there's a great line that Dennis Haysbert delivers when he's in the hospital bed. Which is closer to more of the poetic, hard-boiled dialogue from Sin City 1.
Right, she's a goddess.
She's a goddess, and the goddess doesn't fall in love, and she takes, she enslaves men. She's a siren.
I guarantee you, if somebody wrote something like this in the Screenwriters Collective, and they put it before the group, first thing we'd all say is, cut Mort and Bob. They're great. They were a lot of fun. It was interesting, but they had 5 scenes that you didn't need. And
who? More. Oh, Christopher Maloney and Jeremy Piven.
Jeremy Piven.
Right. Yeah, Piven gets like 3 lines in this movie, and Mort plays essentially the exact same role as Dwight. He's just he gets played again. Total. What do you call it? Echo. It's like, that's a something repeating yourself in the script. Repeating yourself, yeah.
But the fact that it didn't entwine itself with the story, it was just on its own.
It didn't elaborate, but it was the same. It was the same thing. The same. There was a couple of places where this film repeats itself. Mort getting seduced by Ava and then paying for it, the same as Dwight getting seduced by Ava and then paying for it. Also, the Dwight and Ava finale is basically Dwight convinces Marv to assault their house together.
Right.
And there's an assault on the house, and Marv takes on Manute, which is possibly the best action, fight sequence in the movie, which is they're really kicking each other's ass, and then some great moments, some great fighting, and then Marv actually, gouges out Manute's eye, and that's when I was like, yes, now we're getting somewhere. But then again, it repeated in the Nancy and Rourke plot, where Nancy convinces Marv to go, storm the castle of Rourke's castle instead of Ava's castle. So the story's, it's repeating itself a little.
In a sense, I'm okay with that. But just Morton Bob, you could cut him out. Johnny, unfortunately, you could cut him out.
No, you're not cutting out Johnny. I'm keeping Johnny.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Johnny was my favorite part.
Wallenquist you can cut out, and
I thought maybe it's fine. Ava has bigger intentions than just sitting on her duff and whiling, spending her late husband's cash. But
what about Gail?
You could replace her.
Gail and the girls from downtown.
It's one of those things where it's like I like them a lot, but if they had not been in there, I don't know that I would have missed them. I like Rosario Dawson a lot. It's great that she was there, but it's unfortunate that they were just. It was one of those
anything
things.
else you liked or disliked about the Dwight and Ava stuff? Let's see. What did you like about the Dwight and Ava plot? You're reaching, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean it was fine.
It was very cliche film noir stuff, And
yeah, I mean Manute was great.
Eva Green keeps getting naked. She's in a bathtub. She's in a pool. So
that's true.
There's a moment where she's waiting for Mort to call her up.
Yeah.
To finally decide to sleep with her, and she picks up the phone and she goes, "Finally." I'm like, I'm saying that to myself. Finally, this movie's taking forever.
Yeah, and I looked at it just now. It's apparently only 102 minutes.
The movie?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I'm talking about, fat on a story just is not about length. It's about.
I'm wondering if we cut the fat away, if it would be less than a short. It's like. Ugh.
A 90-minute action flick is perfect to me.
I don't know if it would be 90 minutes. So that said,
on to the Nancy and Rourke plot. Nancy, Marvin Rourke, Nancy Hardigan, Marvin Rourke.
I mean, I like it that it's a carryover from the previous film.
Yeah.
That if you didn't pay attention to the previous one, I don't know that you necessarily had to see Sin City 1 to follow this story. It's clear what she's trying to do. It's clear more or less why she's trying to do it.
Nancy has that transformation. She cuts off her hair. She cuts her face up. Finally, Nancy cutting her face with the knives.
With the broken glass. Yeah.
Yeah. With the glass is actually one of these great visual themes that Rodriguez uses. All the protagonists, from Marv to Dwight, to Dwight in the first film,
to Dwight in this next film,
to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, they all get their face cut up, beaten up, and so Nancy sort of using the glass to cut her own face, and then cutting her hair and transforming her outfit and picking up a gun, turns her from femme fatale into detective, film noir protagonist. She becomes. She's got the beaten up face now. She's the main character, and now the plot's hers. It's Nancy's plot. It's not Hardigan's plot anymore because he's dead. She takes over for him.
See, and that part of it I did like, because anything where you have a physical transformation of a character, it doesn't just speak to the character. It speaks to real life in a lot of ways. Somebody cuts their hair and they're a totally different person. And in film and in just theater in general, it's like the biggest transformation you can do to a person besides a physical, actual transformation of changing actors, say. You cut somebody's hair and give them a different haircut. Think, for instance, in Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle goes from a full head of hair and then he cuts hair and he's got a mohawk.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's the angel of death.
And this film speaks a very visual language. So did the original Sin City.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of his greatest strengths is the visual language it's spoken. For me, also the finale where Nancy kills Rourke.
Using Hardigan's gun.
Using Hardigan's gun, and then Hardigan actually appears as a ghost to distract him. I bought it. I loved it because they set up the ghost early on, previous plots, early on as a bookend. Hardigan's ghost is walking around, and you're like, is that Hardigan? Is he alive again? No, it's his ghost. And so
yeah, I did like that.
I love that setup. I bought it. And it actually is a parallel to how Rourke used the mirror to fool her. And so the mirror actually, he looks in the mirror and he sees Hardigan in it, and he hesitates, and that's how Nancy's able to shoot him.
In fact, in the Nancy story, it seems like mirrors play a big role because she's looking at herself quite often. She smashes her face, or her forehead into the mirror, and Hardigan appears behind her saying, don't do this. And we see her reflection in the jagged glass. Clearly, she's losing it, which is something of a film cliche. But I thought it was used pretty well here. And then, of course, she cuts her face with the mirror. And then, of course, at the end, Hardigan appears in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It wasn't too over the top. I thought it was noticeable enough where you could look at it and go, oh, I see what's going on here. But it wasn't too in your face. That's, I think, one of the stronger points of her storyline.
For me, the Nancy Marvin Rourke storyline was a good finish for this movie because you've got Nancy's transformation from femme fatale into the hard-boiled protagonist of a film noir. You get Rourke finally getting his, and you get Marv still kicking ass. What happened to Marv in the end there? He got shot up, or?
No, I think his gun jammed and he got shot. This is one of those things where it's a little fat on the bone.
Yeah.
Get rid of Marv and it would be fine. Marv is there just because.
We like having Marv around because he's a bad motherfucker, and his face looks like it's been beaten in 100 times. And
well, the thing is, Marv is popular from the graphic novels itself. There was I don't want to say an action figure, but a little statuette of him in the electric chair. And he presses a button and his eyes glow red and he says, "Is that all you got?" And, he's just a popular character. And if you didn't have him in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, you wouldn't sell 15 tickets at $5.40 on a Saturday.
Yeah.
You would have only sold 10. So,
we covered a lot. You want to just, summarize your experience, Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For?
I kind of wish I'd been at home for bath time. I could have. This is something like if it's on TV and you don't have anything better to do, go for it. It's worth it for the Johnny storyline.
You're hating on Rodriguez. You're hating on Frank Miller.
Mostly, I'm hating on Frank Miller because I think that it's his fault for this.
You direct at least half of this movie.
Yeah, it's like my thing is that this was a very fatty kind of film. I don't mind if people go for the tropes. If the tropes work, that's great. If you have a buddy cop kind of situation where you have a straight man, as it were, and the loose cannon, that's great. Because if you look at True Detective, that's a buddy cop kind of thing where you have the straight man in Hart and the loose cannon in Cole, but they do something so different with it that it's great, and the trope is still there. But
it's not a buddy cop genre. It's the film noir genre.
But if you look at the relationship between the two, Hart is he's a Christian. He's supposedly a family man. He's the kind of guy that you would imagine saying, "I'm too old for this shit." Whereas Cole is the atheist in the Deep South, where Christianity is a big to-do. He has a nihilistic view of life. He is the quote loose cannon, and that's what I think makes it great. Is because
we're getting into True Detective.
Yeah.
Chris Theokis will be running our True Detective workshop in a couple of weeks.
And that's something actually I've been thinking of. I've seen the first couple of episodes, and that's something I thought about for a while. Is that if you have, it's difficult to escape the tropes of any given genre, and it's almost to the point where it's
you
like
shouldn't escape them. You should embrace them and reinvent them. That's
precisely
what great screenwriting is.
And so Sin City does not try to escape them. It embraces them, but it does not try to do anything new with them.
That's okay. So I'll pick up from there because that's my thing. I went to see this movie. I wanted to see this movie because Robert Rodriguez embraced Frank Miller's reinvention of the film noir. Okay.
Right.
In Sin City, the graphic novel. Okay. He took film noir to this beautiful visual place with the drawings, with the style of drawing, with the color themes, with the ultra violence, with the ultra sex. Frank Miller did innovate the genre there. Okay,
right.
And so Sin City was an extremely original film, and adding the multi-plot ensemble structure was a great choice by the filmmaker at the time. Because it works with the way the books were written, and I went to see Sin City 2 for more of that, and I didn't get enough. It wasn't as much, it wasn't genre enough for me, and
right.
And, while the aesthetics were good, they weren't better than the original. While the dialogue was somewhat poetic here and there and hard-boiled, it wasn't as good as the original. It had its moments, I wanted more, but I actually, from all the reviews it's been getting, I thought it would be horrible. It wasn't horrible. It was just sort of a watered down Sin City 2, an Americano, or Scotch on the Rocks,
I will say this: I have not made using a coffee machine a good cup of coffee ever since I hit New York 10 years ago. It's a coffee that I would make in a coffee machine. That's a terrible, terrible coffee.
You're saying Sin City 2 is the coffee you would make?
Yes.
Well, that doesn't say a lot about your coffee making skills.
I will not lie. I make a terrible cup of coffee ever since I hit New York City. The moment I stepped foot in New York City, I lost the ability to make a cup of coffee.
Well, we're happy you're here.
No, I agree. It's a very watered down kind of.
But I still enjoyed it, and I'm glad Rodriguez made it. I would love to see Sin City 3 where he really goes there, brings back the supervillains, brings back the aesthetic and the poetry. But I think that's going to sum it up for us. This is the Script Podcast, the official podcast of the NYC Screenwriters Collective. Okay, the NYC Screenwriters Collective is the largest nonprofit screenwriting workshop in New York City. If you live in New York, come sign up for a workshop. We review feature-length scripts. We review TV scripts of our members and of professionals. We do script analysis. We do craft-oriented. In addition, the Script Podcast is available on iTunes, and you can listen. You can find us on Twitter at ScriptFeed. I want to thank Chris Theokis, my script doctor, for tonight.
Thank you, David.
And that's it. We'll see you next time on The Script.